Jonapot, Adamola Bookman podcast. Ein Vayuk, Alistair Bond, and Uda Shalom, my friend Johnny Coughlin. This week, we're doing Captain of Hungary, Ferenc Puskás's autobiography. Johnny, you're laughing.
Yeah. So, do you want to tell me what that was?
It said, "Welcome to the Adamola Bookman podcast. My name is Alistair Bond, and here's my friend. Welcome, Johnny Coughlin. And this week we're doing Ferenc Puskás's autobiography."
Oh my God! Wow, look at you. Well, you've certainly done your research, haven't you?
You better believe it, mate. You better believe it. The woman in my coffee shop's from Hungary.
Okay, very nice.
Udo Shalom is formal, and Ein Vayuk is my name is, and Jonapot is informal. Hello. Welcome.
Okay. Udo Shalom, Al. In all my years, I didn't know you were such a Hungarian speaker. It's Hungarian, the language, I assume. It's called Hungarian, like.
It is called Hungarian, and it is twinned with another language in Europe. Which one, Johnny?
I'm going to say Romanian.
Finnish. Interesting fact.
Well, it's reflected in the book. He does say that. He says something about there being some connection between Hungary and Finland.
Indeed, he does. All right, so...
how can a language be twinned? It's not like a town. Do you do those? We have those things in Ireland where towns are twinned with other towns. In England, in fact, and in France. How can you twin a language?
I don't think they did it like that. I don't know. Thank you. Twinning towns, by the way. There's a little village near to where I grew up in Rutland called Whitwell, and honestly, 200 people, and you drive in Whitwell, twinned with Paris. I think the people in Paris are just as proud.
All right, so you're the Hungarian speaker. How do you say this man's name?
Okay, so I asked the lady, it's Ferenc Puskás. So if we sound like Steve McLaren, then that's the fault of the Hungarian language.
Sean Connery, Ferenc.
Yes. Yeah, sure, Ferenc Puskás. So this is very interesting, Johnny, and let's start as we always do. Before you read this book, Johnny, tell me, what did you know about Ferenc Puskás?
He was Hungarian. He was really, really good. He played for Real Madrid. Bit on the chunky side, maybe. That was about the extent of what I know. You?
Yep. I tended to get him mixed up with Lev Yashin, the goalkeeper. And that's it, Johnny. That's it. If you asked me what country he played for, I probably would have said Hungary. But as I say, I might have said Russia as well. Yeah, I didn't know much, Johnny. I didn't know much.
Beyond the Iron Curtain is kind of all the same to you, isn't it?
No, that's not what I'm saying. You're trying to make me look bad. I just didn't know very much about Ferenc Puskás. Someone did make me feel bad. I brought it up to my dad, and he started fucking rabbiting on about the Hungarian Revolution, which I was very scant on details on. But satisfyingly, he got the date wrong. So that's
okay. Yeah. So, Ferenc Puskás, or as he's known in the book, Oxy, or as he calls himself, as he was known as a kid. He never once, I think, does he refer to himself as French in the book. It's always Oxy.
Oxy's like little buddy or little brother. He described it as, but I heard it described as like bud or like chum.
And I saw
our kid in English, like our kid.
Okay, and I saw elsewhere that he was also known as Pancho Puskás. But that must have been when he was in Spain.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, because he didn't just play for Hungary, did he? He also played for Spain, the dirty bastard.
Isn't that remarkable? Yeah, four caps for Spain and one game for Castile, the region.
Yeah, well, that sticks your Jack Grealish up your arse, doesn't it? Like, he played like 80 games for Hungary and then fucked off to Spain. Unbelievable.
It's funny.
This is a particularly unusual book, Johnny. This book was written in 1955.
56? Oh, it was written in 55, right? It was published in 56. And he was 27.
So super young, and he'd achieved so much. But what's so fascinating about Puskás is that this was really only the start, wasn't it?
Yeah. the other thing is, he wrote it, right?
It certainly seems that way.
If he didn't write this, well, then he's a liar. Because he talks about, I'm not much of a writer, that kind of thing a lot, you know.
I'm better at scoring goals. Yeah, great start. I was worried about the book when he opened with that paragraph.
Well, I was worried about the book when it arrived in the post, because it looks like in Peep Show when Mark gets his book published and he gets it published, but he shows up and there's all misspellings and there's pages missing and all the rest of it. That's what my copy of this book looks like.
Yep. Tempest Publishing Limited in Cirencester Road, Stroud. One of the big boys.
How do you feel now? Were your worries?
No, the binding was fine and came together very nicely. No, I enjoyed this book far, far more than I expected to. What about you, Johnny?
Yeah, there was something very charming about this book. There's something very charming about Puskás, actually. There is, I'm going to sound a bit ridiculous now, but there's a humility in this book which I don't think you find with current footballers.
I think you're probably right. In fact, you'd find a huge amount in this book. There's so much, because it's a story of Puskás's life up to that point.
Yeah.
It's definitely like a book about tactics.
Yeah.
But it's also a travelogue, isn't it? He's bringing his experiences around the globe back for the people of Hungary.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Everywhere he goes, he is so involved. He's so interested and excited by what he's seeing. And he writes it all down. It is, as you say, Johnny, deeply, deeply charming. It's so innocent, isn't it? It's so sweet and innocent. And you wonder how much of that is he was living in a communist country at that time under a fairly authoritarian regime. How much he could say, but what he does say is just so adorable. He's lovely.
One of the first places he visits that's far-flung is Mexico, and he's talking about how he'd always wanted to go to Mexico, and he'd read so much about Mexico, and I was like, "Jeez, this guy really loves Mexico." It's like, how much could he possibly have read about Mexico? But he really is. He is a very curious traveller, and as you say, I'm a big fan of Bryson, Bill Bryson myself. I enjoy that kind of stuff. And it really reads like an early travel book by a guy from a time when travel is not common. He's like a footballing Marco Polo or something, you know. I have marked a good few of the various things he said about different countries. This is what he says about London. Although our first stop was Glasgow, I kept on thinking of London, the Great Thames, the tower wrapped in autumn mist that seemed like a veil protecting the historical secrets of the centuries. Buckingham Palace, a secretive facade giving us only a glimpse of the lives of the royal family. Whenever I saw it, I thought of it as a symbol of Great Britain. The guard at the gate, in his traditional picturesque uniform, walking up and down in front of the palace, made me think of the Middle Ages. The changing of the guard is an especially colourful ceremony. The English revere their traditions to an unusual extent. I like that bit. Big Ben, towering in majestic loneliness, counts the minutes, the hours, the centuries. Its booming voice shocks one into realization that time is passing. This voice has warned many generations that every second offers its pleasures and we should make use of them with intelligence. It's not just brilliant.
It's absolutely beautiful. It is beautiful. And Johnny, can I come back at you? Because I've got a paragraph here about Vienna, and which I outlined and just wrote brilliant. The spectacle of Vienna was no surprise. Nevertheless, it was painful to see the bombed, burnt-out city with charred rafters sticking out like broken limbs from the ruins of stone walls. In contrast, the neat green pitch of a football ground was an oasis, packed with an eager, excited crowd and bearing no evidence of the sufferings of the city. Isn't that fucking football there, mate? Whatever's going on around you, that little green pitch on a day, that can take your troubles away. It's lovely.
It is lovely. But that is funny that you outlined that particular thing, because Puskás was, I think he was 19 at the end of the war, maybe. Obviously, that's the aftermath of the war. But this is the extent of what he wrote about the Second World War. The war brought many bitter experiences, but could not change my love for football. The end. No more World War II. That's the extent of it.
Yeah, there is absolutely. Other than the aftermath of Vienna and the effect on the people, he has no mention of the Second World War whatsoever.
Yeah,
and little does he know that's not the end of the political wranglings in his life, eh?
Yeah, well, absolutely.
Yeah, this book was published in 56 is when they had the Hungarian Revolution, which was swiftly swatted aside by the occupying Russians. And it was during this time that Puskás was playing in Spain at Espanyol, right? He was playing for Honved.
He went to play in a fascist country as well.
Oh, yeah, in Spain.
Yeah, he went to play for Franco's team, like.
Oh, that didn't occur to me.
As an aside, I was reading Jonathan Wilson's book about Hungarian football, The Names Heard Long Ago, and that's from kind of earlier part of history. But I think there is a lot to be said about Hungarian football during the Second World War, because there's quite a Jewish presence in Hungarian football. So I'm sure there's a pile of interesting and presumably tragic things to read about or to hear. But anyway, he doesn't get into it. And I'm not accusing him of whitewashing the Second World War. As you say, he was in communist Hungary. God knows what he would have been permitted to say.
Well, that's right. For everything he does say, you have to wonder what he doesn't say. But what he does say is just so curious and so well-meaning. He's just a good egg, isn't he, old Puskás?
That was absolutely my takeaway. It's like, this guy is lovely. Do you think, reading between the lines, do you think he was a boozer?
I think no.
Because I think yes.
Well, he certainly claims not to be. There's a whole lot in this about how he was deterred from drinking alcohol. What makes you think he was a boozer?
He'd be talking about various kind of being out. Like he when they went to Sweden, he said, and again, this was kind of in his travel writing kind of style, he was saying that in Sweden, you could only buy wine with a dinner. You couldn't buy it by itself. So you'd have to buy more than one dinner if you wanted to drink wine. He said you couldn't buy a glass of wine by itself for any amount of money, which reminded me of, I don't know if this was a thing where you were briefly during COVID in Ireland, when they started letting people go out to drink again. You could only have a drink if you bought a meal. So people, I guess, were doing what Ferenc Puskás was doing in Sweden, you know. I'll have 4 dinners, please.
Well, back here is only restaurants are allowed to open. So, like, someone just put like a soup pan in the middle of the bowl. There you go, bowl of soup. That'll be $8.
But okay, shall we get into it? It's called Captain of Hungary. And I should say that there is a second Puskás book, which was published in the 90s. And I've been inclined to read it now, so maybe this can be part 1. Maybe we can come back to the second one, assuming it's in English.
No, absolutely. No, because I'm genuinely fascinated. I mean, all I know is that he couldn't go back to Hungary after the revolution. He had to stay in Spain. He managed to get his family out there. And then he had this second half of his career, which was just astonishing. I mean, as if the lad was incredible. Incredible. His statistics are wild.
Yeah, so they won five leagues in a row. They won the European Cup 3 times, 59, 60 and 66. But he was the leading scorer in 1960, 62, 63, 64. And actually, just before we get on to the book, I think you're asking, what did you know about him? And I suppose not very much. Obviously, there's the Puskás Award, which is for best goal of the year, isn't it, globally? Yeah. But this guy, he was known as the Galloping Major, which is quite nice. This just from his Wikipedia, but he scored 806 goals in 793 official games. This guy is unbelievable. The 7th top scorer of all time. It's incredible, isn't it? Like, this guy was a goal machine. And because of that humility referred to, you wouldn't know that from reading the book. You would know that he scored goals and he liked scoring goals, but you wouldn't realise that he was in the Messi, Ronaldo bracket, that absolute upper echelon of the kind of goal to game ratio.
No, you wouldn't. And what's more, he's so generous about other players as well. I mean, he waxes lyrical about your Stanley Matthews and the like. I mean, he goes absolutely crazy for Matthews.
As you say, he wrote this book when he was 27, and he says, I want to be like Stanley Matthews, not only play until I'm whatever age, but play at the top, which he did, as you say. Like, all of this came later, after the book.
But more than that, he went on to be, like, genuinely a proper manager. I mean, the lad reached the European Cup final with Panathinaikos, lost to Cruyff's Ajax.
Yeah, and the similarities between Puskás, that era Hungary, and Cruyff's Netherlands are pretty striking, right? There's a lot of parallels there.
Yeah. Also, he was manager of AEK Athens, who succumbed to another of our autobiography guests, Brian Clough. Yeah, he lost 7-1 to Forest.
Lost 7-1 to Forest.
Yeah.
By the way, on that topic, let me just.
Well, whilst you're looking, Johnny, I've got a little trivia question for you, Johnny.
Go on.
Which current Premier League manager was coached by Ferenc Puskás? I'm so glad you don't know this. It's lovely. It's a lovely fact.
He managed in Spain, Paraguay, the Saudi national team. He managed the Hungarian national team for one game, I think. I don't know. Let's say Pep.
No, he managed Ange Postecoglou when he was manager of South Melbourne. Isn't that interesting?
That is interesting. Listen to the teams he managed. It's actually pretty cool, right? And let me see, I don't even know where this team is. So Hercules, Spanish football team in Alicante, but then San Francisco Golden Gate Gales, Vancouver Royals, Alaves, Panathinaikos, Real Murcia, Colo Colo, which is that South Africa?
Chile,
Saudi Arabia, AEK Athens, as you said, Al Masry, which is in Egypt, Salt America, which is in Paraguay. Another Paraguayan team, Club Cerro Porteño, South Melbourne, as you said, and then Hungary national team, which I think he only managed them for one game. Isn't that a fun life? This guy just loves travel.
He really loves
travel.
We
definitely have to read that second book.
We definitely will read that second book.
But sorry, the thing I was going to say, he gave the full set of score lines from the 1954 World Cup, the one that they got to the final in. And the scores are wild. Hungary beat West Germany in the group game 8-3. Uruguay beat Scotland 7-0. England and Belgium 4-all. Loads of 4-2s. In the quarterfinals, Austria 7, Switzerland 5. It's like football. Football sounds like so much fun. Like,
yeah, it is wild. I mean, in the World Cup, he absolutely demolishes Germany. Like to the tune of 6 clear goals, and then loses in the final. It's
5 clear goals. It was 8-3. Yeah, we'll get back to that. Anyway, let's talk about the book. He was born on the 1st of April Fool's Day, in 1927, and he died on 17th of November 2006. So yeah, he was born in the interbellum, the period between the First and Second World War.
Yeah, and he sounded like he had a fairly happy childhood. His life was all about playing football. The opening chapter is called The Sausage Championship. So he's there playing with his friends when a butcher approaches them. But he's scared of the butcher. Why is he scared of the butcher, Johnny?
I don't know. Because
the kid sold his cat to buy tickets for a football game. How do you sell a fucking cat, Johnny? Who sells a cat? And what do they sell the cat for?
And who did they sell the cat to, I guess, most significantly?
Another butcher?
Well, he arrived at a bunch of sausages. It is a bit sinister, isn't it?
I guess this is pre-television and internet. The butcher just wanted the boys to play a game of football for him to watch. And he promised to give them a string of sausages to the winning team. And this is where a lot of Puskás's football administration came in. They had to organise the teams. There was one side of 4, one side of 3. How did they decide who would be 4 and 3? Well, what did they do? They worked out how many times we could keep the ball bouncing on one foot without it touching the ground. That's called a keepy-uppy, Puskás. Don't you know that?
These are just neighbourhood kids, and they're all essentially, this guy comes along, and then eventually, was it him or another guy just says, "Come with me, children, we're going to bring you to the stadium of Kispest," which is the team that later becomes Honved. And they're like, this guy, what is the story with this dude? And they're all playing barefoot, as you say, and they're kicking around like homemade footballs, which I guess would have been common. I think people were still doing that when my dad was young. But it was true. He brought them into the stadium, into the Kispest Stadium, and said, "Here, take whatever gear you want." And all those young kids from the neighbourhood, they became the youth team. That was my understanding. It's pretty incredible stuff.
Yeah, it seems like that. Yeah, he went on to play with a bunch of those kids for Honved, or was then those Kispest Athletic Club. as I was telling you, Johnny, my local coffee shop, the lady there is Hungarian, and I showed her this book. She was genuinely really excited that we were doing a book on a Hungarian player, but she wanted to state clearly that he was Ronaldo, and he remains Ronaldo to Hungarian people. He's probably the most famous Hungarian. And the other thing which says he used to play barefoot. That is obviously what Hungarians think of Puskás. When you think of Puskás, they think barefoot, and he's quick to underline that in the opening of the book. They play a game where they're playing against some of a team and they're losing, and he just can't understand. He's crying. He cries a lot at half time when he can't understand why they're losing. But he whips off the shoes and socks of the team, and they play barefoot and they destroy this team.
Yeah, that was
I think
lovely.
This is very much part of a Puskás legend, like the barefoot footballer.
Yeah, it's lovely. And Honvéd, by the way, means Homeland Defence. It's like a military team. Kispest is the part of Budapest where it's based, essentially. But yeah, Homeland Defence is what Honvéd means. And as you say, who's the next most famous Hungarian? The most famous Hungarian at the moment is Viktor Orbán. And I tell you what, Ferenc Puskás is a lot nicer than Viktor Orbán.
He certainly is. Houdini?
Go on, Hungarian.
Yeah.
You know, we took a risk here with this, taking a book written by a 27-year-old Hungarian. It was written in 1956. It could have went either way, but my fears were fairly quickly allayed, actually.
As soon as he stole the cat, I was happy.
And he's from there was a book brought out a few years ago called Range, which was kind of the anti-Gladwell 10,000 hours thing, where you should focus on something for 10,000 hours. And this book, Range, said that you should have a much more varied sporting childhood. Feather rather than woods, apparently. But that was very much Puskás's thing. He was into everything. He loved everything, this guy.
He did, but when he needed to, he was dedicated. He spent pages and pages describing how he practices football, just putting chairs in the way and dribbling around them and getting a tennis ball and keeping it up 200 times with his wrong foot.
He said at one point that he practiced, and this was when he was a grown-up, it might have even been before the World Cup in 1954, that he practiced headed keepy-uppies, just headers, until he could regularly do 400 without dropping the ball. So that got me thinking now, what do you think is the world record for keepy-uppies?
I think my record for heady keepy-ups is 3. And the third was lucky. I just don't know how to do it. I can't do it. I've never been able to do it. I just made my neck. I'm shit at football. But yeah, 3. What is the record for keep? Okay, let me have a guess. Ooh, I reckon it's going to be like days. 40,000.
Well, so it's done in time, actually. It's done by, they don't count them. But it was, can I tell you, or do you want to guess?
No, I want to have a fucking argument about they don't count them. They do it by time.
Well,
Bollocks,
I'm sure they count. Like, imagine having to count.
I'm not angry at you, Johnny. I'm angry at the people at...
So the fellow who's counting is 546,321. It'd be very hard to count them. You know what I mean?
You don't need to count them. You need to have a final number. Just click it. All right, Johnny. So how long then? How long? Okay,
yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to go... Well, I said 2 days. 48 hours.
No, it was 28 hours by Swede Victor Eriksson in 2023, so it's a new enough record. And the record headers, and it seems like people could improve on this, 8.5 hours, 8 hours and 32 minutes.
Yeah.
It's a long way from 3 headers, but it seems like it's also a long way from 28 hours. But anyway.
What's that? So 3 headers is what, 2 seconds? So I've got... There's a work on.
You better get practicing. Some of it's very innocent, isn't it? He's a very precocious footballer. He's playing in the first team at Kispest, very young, 16 maybe.
Yep, 16 years old. Yeah, well, I'm glad you've got onto this, Johnny, because this is absolutely adorable.
Yeah, you got to say about the initiation.
Yes.
Go on.
I am. First of all, before we say that, he's a gooner. He's a fucking Arsenal fan.
Yeah,
and very clearly, he loves Arsenal.
And how? Like how in 1940 whatever it is? How are you an Arsenal?
They probably
fan?
had Sky Sports, mate. They probably had Sky Sports.
So they're listening on the radio. Obviously, that can be the only thing that is possible.
Yeah, and because he seemed to have a good idea about a lot of English footballers as well. Like How was he? Yeah.
But
How was he
tactics
witnessing Arsenal?
Tactics as well. I guess radio commentary. Obviously, they have to describe a lot more. When you hear radio commentary, it is very different to television commentary. But that really blew my mind, actually, that he was an Arsenal fan.
I mean, that would have coincided with the Herbert Chapman Arsenal. If he was born in, they would have been a good team at that point. But yeah, how they managed to convey that legend over to Hungary, I don't know.
Okay, but the initiation. Go on, tell us all about it.
Yeah. So first of all, they were on a train traveling to another team, and he says in the book this train took all day, and I looked up how far it was. It was 8 miles for 2 train stations. Bloody slow public transport in communist Hungary. Yeah, it's traveling less than a mile an hour. But
why didn't they just walk?
Anyway, so yeah, the initiation rites, because the 2 words put together, initiation rites, conjures up something very, very unpleasant. You're drinking a pint of piss or something, or running through like some alleyway of people hitting you with a table tennis bat on your arse or something. Things like that.
I think it was called the unblinking eye in the Stonecutters episode of The Simpsons.
That's what I was thinking of. Yes. So we saw this. There's some initiation rites for Puskás, and he had to answer some pretty awkward questions, didn't he, Johnny?
Yeah.
How would you like to be asked? And here's a couple. Why is the giraffe's neck so long?
Why is the lion's head so big?
Oh, stop it. I don't want to play if you're going to ask me these questions. I'll play for another team.
And for getting it wrong, the punishment was 25 smacks on the bottom.
And he was forced to drink some wine.
Wine and vinegar poured down his throat.
Wine and vinegar, which he claimed would put you off alcohol for life. Although Johnny, the skeptic, does not believe.
No.
Yeah, later on, he'd just be buying tons of meals in Swedish restaurants and drinking his thimble of wine with each of them.
And on the thing you were saying earlier about him practicing, he said he practiced with a tennis ball, as he said, and he learned to run with the ball without looking at it. And he said that allowed him, to kind of rove around the field and look at the play in front of him. But that's cool, isn't it?
It absolutely was. There's a whole pattern I've outlined. It's almost a full page. But his training technique would not look out of place in the modern game, it seems to me. It was just intense. I mean, and he seems so aware of the stretching and stuff that other people just... I think that information was always there. It's just your Grinches and your George Bests just said, fuck it, no, I'm not interested.
Your Robbie Fowlers. You know what I mean? Like, whatever that he's playing, 40 years later.
Yeah, that's it. He was blindfolded and kicking balls in buckets and stuff. It's really wild. Total mastery of the ball. Might not be a ball in the bucket, but something like that. He was shooting blindfold and hitting it 9 times out of 10. Absolutely majestic.
Yeah, it is really interesting, isn't it? And you mentioned earlier that the lady in the coffee shop said he's like Ronaldo. But he has all of this incredible dedication, but without, at least in the book, any of the mania that you kind of associate with people who, Tiger Woods or Cristiano Ronaldo. He doesn't seem to be like that at all. Maybe he is more like Federer. Federer doesn't seem to be like that.
No. The communist mindset surely must do something about that, though. Your ego surely must be suppressed somewhat.
I'm sure Stanley Matthews wasn't an absolute out of control maniac either. It was also the time. You know what I mean?
No, I'm sure he was a nice fellow.
Yeah. Yeah. So he was 18 when the war ended, and he played and scored against Austria. He played for this national team when he was 18.
I mean, basically, this book is about playing Austria about 30 times. They play Austria a lot, right? Even 1955, they played 96 times, right? Yeah.
96 times, yeah. He says, it is so innocent. So that he was much younger than the rest of the players on the Hungarian national team, but they were very kind to him, is what he says, but they'd play tricks on him. And there was one particular player who he'd look at to take a lead when he was in socially awkward situations. And they went to Vienna and they were given bananas after a meal, and he was just looking at the banana and he didn't know what to do, and no one else was doing anything, so he just ate the banana with the skin on, and then everyone cracked their asses laughing because
because he was looking at Sengela.
They told him to,
and
he did it.
Was like, and he looked at it. He was like, he started nibbling on his banana with his skin, and poor old Puskás was like, "Oh, is that what you do?" That chapter's called Strange Fruit.
Yeah, well, that was fun, wasn't it? And all that stuff I mentioned about him going to Mexico. If it took them a whole day to travel 8 miles on the train, can you imagine what the trip from Hungary to Mexico would have been like? But he lied to his mother about going because she was so worried about him. And then he was in morbid fear for the rest of the time he was there because he thought he was going to be struck down in retribution for lying to his mother.
Well, he was struck down in retribution, wasn't he? He was sent to prison for offending local morals.
Yep.
By wearing shorts. He's so cute. Yeah, apparently he was so hot in Mexico, he put on his shorts, and apparently that was not the done thing in Mexico, and he was arrested.
Yeah. He's quite wide-eyed, isn't he, when he goes out into the world, and it's really quite charming. But then he's really into football, and he will give real detail about football matches, and not boring detail. It is actually very interesting, and he does have an eye or an ear for a funny story as well. He says I literally laughed out loud reading about this. They were playing against Bulgaria, and it was a rough game or whatever, and he said the Bulgarians were, whatever, the fans were pretty wild and stuff, and he said at one stage one of their players was through on goal, and a Bulgarian soldier ran out onto the pitch and kicked the ball away to prevent a goal. And the ref was so perplexed he didn't know what to do, so he just awarded a throw-in.
Well, I think that's within the laws of the game, isn't it? Yeah, he really does like football. And he is very innocent. And is this just the next chapter after he's eating the banana? He gets offered 30,000. It's the money's in pounds. £30,000 to play in Italy. And I did the maths. And that was £1.5 million in today's money, which he just turned down. Yeah. And continued to live in Hungary.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, he does get offered more money. I mean, the next chapter, chapter 7, he goes to... Oh, it's more about Mexico and the bullfights. I mean, the writing about the bullfighting. Yeah, it fun. Really is. It's like Alan Wicker. It really is like reading travel writing. And he doesn't like it. Right side of history there, Puskás.
Yeah, and he was excited about it. So he said they all felt a bit sick, actually.
Yeah, obviously that endears him to me. He doesn't like seeing an animal tortured. Well done, Puskás. Well done.
He's just way too noble.
He's a very noble man.
So you mentioned the Finns earlier and the linguistic twinning of Finnish and Hungarian. This is his line about the Finns. Finns have a, quote, deep, quiet, real sincerity and friendship in their dreamy blue eyes. But their food sucked. This was at the Olympics. They won the Olympics beating Romania, Turkey, Italy, Sweden and Yugoslavia in the final. He said that they were the haute école, the high school, if you want, of football at the time, and he missed it. He said he missed a penalty in the final, and he said it was the first time in his life he had ever missed a penalty.
Yeah, bad time.
Yeah, but he scored, and they won 2-0. And yeah, this was noteworthy. Hungary were third in the medal table at the 1952 Olympics. I wonder where they were in the 2024 Paris Olympics.
Yeah, no kidding. But he talks a great deal about that, how sport is part of a Hungarian psyche, doesn't he? He's really, really into it, and he's very proud. Yeah, Hungary was a very proud sporting nation, wasn't it, once upon a time?
I think Orban is actively putting a lot of money into football, I think, in order to use it as a propaganda tool or whatever. But yeah, I think they're trying to go back to that.
Well, you want to put Dominic Szoboszlai front and centre. My missus caught sight of him the other day on the football pitch and was very taken with him.
Oh, really?
He's a fine-looking fella.
400,000 people welcomed him back to Budapest, but all wonders only last 3 days, which he said is a saying, but if it is a saying, I've never heard that saying before.
Yeah, that's probably right, though, isn't it? Yeah, you get if you won the World Cup, you'd be happy for 3 days, but then life goes on, doesn't it?
Yeah. He says he's not a writer and he can't put into words the feeling he experienced on seeing St. Peter's Cathedral in Rome.
He paid a silent homage to all the fallen gladiators when he entered the Colosseum. The man is a writer.
Then did you know this story about, it's presumably apocryphal, but the story about Da Vinci and the Last Supper, where apparently, I did read about this, and Da Vinci was very particular about the models he would use for any given painting. And he looked long and hard for the models he used for Jesus and Judas in particular for the Last Supper. And it took him, he found the guy for Jesus, he was happy with that, and then he was looking for Judas for months. And then the guy broke down crying, and he's like, "Do you not remember me?" And he's like, "No." He's like, "You selected me for Jesus also." This guy was at the time he'd been arrested, and his life had fallen apart. He was awaiting execution. And this is the story. Sounds totally bogus, but it's not just Puskás. It's out there. It's online.
It all dates back to Puskás. He was the original guy who came up with that bullshit.
The original fake news peddler.
So you're talking about him missing a penalty and then scoring. After he missed the penalty and then scored in the final, "I got so many kisses after this goal, they would have sufficed a modest woman for a lifetime." How many kisses? It's got to be 11 or 12. That'll do.
It was
not surprising that we celebrated with some wine, although naturally in a restrained quantity only.
Go on.
Not Garincha. I believe him.
I don't know. I think the lady doth protest a little bit too much because he's always talking about his temperance. Sweden, it was not my first visit to Sweden, but there was always something new to discover. The quite unhurried attitude of the people astonished me. Very seldom does one see anyone in a hurry. Even the newspaper vendors, who in other countries shout so loudly, sell their papers very quietly. There is a saying that when two Italians are talking, a foreigner will call the police because he thinks that a deadly quarrel is taking place. In Sweden, 20 Swedes can talk and you can still hear the humming of a fly above the conversation.
But he loves everywhere he goes, doesn't he? Everywhere he goes. He goes to Egypt and he loves that. The houses were small and so were the people.
Yeah, but you know where he doesn't like? Brazil. But we'll get to that now. He says, "We flew to Egypt for a long tour. Hungary was in the depths of quite a severe winter when we left, and arriving in Egypt's sunshine was like waking up suddenly to find all the charm and beauty of spring. From our plane, we looked down on the magnificent panorama of the dignified River Nile and the exciting pyramids lit up by the sun's rays like flashing beacons from ancient, long-forgotten ages, from the rich, powerful pharaohs."
I've got more. "I gazed at the mysterious smile of the Sphinx and wondered if it were at me and at all who had wanted to solve her eternal smile and why that she was smiling."
Oh, yeah.
The eternal smile. He's really, really into it.
He's lost in his football game, man. So they beat England in Wembley in 1953. England had not lost a home game and I wrote down the page in case I need to go back and check this again, for 90 years.
Great times.
That's
presumably for like 60 of those years we were just playing Scotland, right?
Yes. Yeah, I would have thought so. He said they received 8,000 telegrams after this from fans congratulating them. A letter came from Sweden and another came from a possible mistress in Romania who said we spent a great night together in Romania in 1946, and his wife saw this and she was quite understandably upset until he managed to convince her that he wasn't in Romania in 1946.
He was receiving letters and they were just addressed to Puskás, Hungary, which reminded me of Countdown in the old days, and you could just write to Richard Whiteley, Dick, Yorkshire. That's all you needed. It would get to him.
Is that really true?
Yeah. Lovely. A little boy, after they beat England, came up to him, and this was his favourite part of it. "Please, sir, take me to your country and teach me to play football." That's what kids do, isn't it? After they lose. Not now. They give you a finger and call you a paedophile.
They'd stand there with a sign saying, "Can I have number 11's shirt?" And their father's standing beside them.
Yeah.
Jealousy.
eBay account.
Yeah, exactly. Fucking hell, that's one of the least charming things about modern football.
Of a long, long list.
Yeah, that was nice. So England came to Budapest for the return leg in May 1954, and this is really when we're pedaling towards the really exciting part of the book. And Oxy, our boy Oxy, had to change his number because he was getting so many phone calls, and he said that there was just wild anticipation for this game because, as you said, he was an Arsenal fan. England were a big deal in Hungary. And he says that in order for people to get the most out of their tickets, they were going into the stadium, smuggling in pigeons and sending the pigeons out with the tickets so another person could come in on the same ticket. If that's true, it's incredible.
I was absolutely desperate to read that bit out, Johnny. I have it written down here. Look, amazing. That is fucking brilliant, isn't it? Get your old homing pigeon in your pocket. Boom, 2 tickets. Absolutely, you can keep doing it. Get in the stadium early. Boom. Off you go again, son. The pigeon's loving it. You're loving it. Everybody's loving it. It's absolutely brilliant. A homing pigeon. Oh, come on. That would still work now, wouldn't it? Just brilliant. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. I loved it.
Yeah, it was really, really fun. And they won 7-1. They absolutely spanked England. 7-1.
Yeah, ouch. Yeah, Stanley Matthews learned a lesson that day.
Did you know this, Al? In Bulgaria, a nod of the head means no, and a shake of the head means yes.
Well, unfortunately, Puskás didn't know that before he got a very painful massage.
Would you like me to do it harder?
I will indeed, then, sir.
The main things about Puskás's football career up to the age of 27 were winning the Olympics, and then the kind of last third of this book, maybe, Al, is about the World Cup in 1954, which was held in Switzerland. The reading that I did, to kind of, fill in a few gaps for this book, you would know reading the book that Hungary were good. It's well known that they were kind of early innovators in tactics and stuff like that. But you wouldn't know from reading the book quite how brilliant Hungary were and how favoured they were going into this. They hadn't lost for 2 years going into the World Cup. And they were playing what I saw described elsewhere as an early form of total football. And he said when they played against England that time, what really bamboozled England was their players were swapping positions, So this was totally different. People hadn't done that at all before.
It just seems that old tactics were absolutely insane, though, right? Just absolutely nuts. He said he talks about Ted Drake, and he was like, Ted Drake didn't have much luck in one game against Hungary, but he'd had a lot more luck in the previous game. But that was because the centre half in the previous game was playing attacking football. So he had the run of the place. The defenders didn't defend in the old days. I don't know what they did. I don't get it.
He just wandered off.
They're off attacking. You just leave one man back. It's all right. I think I could have been an innovator 100 years ago in football. I would have been a genius. Don't know. Your mistake is all going forward. You're like children. 4 of you stay back. Yes.
Yeah, maybe. But anyway, it was innovative at the time. So going to the World Cup, they are unbeaten for 2 years. And so they've won the Olympics. They are kind of favoured, I guess. And there were 4 team groups, but you only played 2 games. So you didn't play every team in the group, And they beat Korea, South Korea that is, 9-0. And this was at the time, would have been the time of the Korean War. So he offers some sympathy to the South Koreans and says they were absolutely abysmal and they shouldn't have been at the World Cup at all. And then they spanked the West Germans, 8-3. And I think there's a lot about this World Cup, and because Puskás is a very humble man, there's a lot about this World Cup that would be so scandalous now. They were robbed, and I am very much on their side.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. So he got injured against the Germans, didn't he?
Because they were just kicking him up and down the field off the ball, and they kicked him in the ankle to the point where his ankle just kind of collapsed, and he missed the next, was it 2 games?
He missed Brazil game, didn't he?
He missed the quarterfinals and the semi-finals, and he came back for the final. But yeah, scumbags.
In the morning, I hurried to dry my pillow because he'd been crying all night because of his injury.
He didn't want his teammates seeing it. He must have been crying an awful lot if the tears were literally visible on the pillow.
How does one dry a pillow? So so the Brazil game, well, they beat them comfortably. What was the Brazil score?
they won the quarterfinals against Brazil 4-2, and they won the semi-finals against defending champions Uruguay 4-2. But like the Brazil one he says was the main event of the entire World Cup. The Battle of Bern.
Having been defeated, Brazil went in, apparently smashed a light bulb in the Hungarian dressing room, and then fucking full-on attacked the Hungarian team.
Knocked the guy out. Spark out unconscious. Here's a fun fact for you, Al. The stadium in Bern is called a Wankdorf Stadium. They were kicking each other all over the field. Everyone was really excited about Brazil. All the showmanship. There was a kind of a load of, dance and kind of spectacle to how they came out onto the field, and then they were immediately just absolute scumbags. But I know that Hungary gave away a penalty as well, and I'd say they were no angels. Our friend Nilson Santos from Botafogo, he was sent off for fighting with a Hungarian player, Bosic. Santos started it, by the way. And yeah, he says they eventually won, and they didn't walk off the pitch. It felt like, well, he wasn't playing, but it felt like they were born by invisible angels, which was quite nice. But their celebrations so enraged the Brazilians that, yeah, they came in and they kicked off.
They were fighting in the dark against an unseen foe.
Yeah.
Lovely.
What he doesn't say in the book is that the notorious Hungarian AVH, the secret police of communist Hungary, were there protecting the Hungarians. I see on Wiki that the AVH are described as, quote, an external appendage of the KGB. I'd say those boys were used to fighting in the dark anyway. They chased off the Brazilians, and there's an allegation. Remember our very first episode, we were aghast at Jamie Vardy, and when he got in trouble for the fight, him and his friend were glassing people or whatever. Puskás is accused of glassing a Brazilian player, smashing him with a bottle. Our Ferenc Puskás. Can you imagine that?
I don't believe a word of it.
Not for 1 second. Not for a second do I believe that.
He didn't even know our giraffe's neck was so long. He's not going to glass somebody.
So let me read a couple of things. So he names the referees, and every referee that had in that competition seemed to be English. But he said, the referee, Arthur Ellis, I thought it was going to be the greatest game I'd ever see. I was on top of the world. Whether politics and religion had something to do with it, this is Catholic Brazil against communist Hungary. I don't know. But they behaved like animals. It was a disgrace. It was a horrible match. Certainly British players and fans would never act in such a reprehensible manner.
Yeah,
in today's climate, so many players would have been sent off and the game would have been abandoned. My only thought was I was determined to finish it. And then he wrote later, the same fella, the ref, these people must learn sportsmanship and we must teach them. South Americans are most excitable and more passionate than we are, even more so than the Italians. Unlike the British, they do crazy things impulsively. Then a few minutes later, they are genuinely and deeply sorry. But Ellis himself was spat on by the Brazilians, who accused him of being part. Now he's British and his name is Arthur Ellis, and they accused him of being part of a communist plot to help the Hungarians.
You see, Mr. McCullough, you get, isn't it, with his old books, Johnny? You just don't get anything about this.
Yeah.
So, can we move on to the final?
So just to say, the Battle of Bern, that's been described as the dirtiest game in the history of the World Cup. But anyway, on you go.
All right. So then we get on to the final. And here's something else which I thought was a modern phenomenon. Before the World Cup final, a local youth band played outside the Hungary's hotel until 5 a.m. They were doing it back then. So none of the Hungarian team had any sleep that night.
They were staying in a part of Switzerland called Solothurn, which is in the German-speaking part of Switzerland. So, yeah, maybe the Swiss Germans were happy to help out their West German buddies.
Yeah, well, I'm sure they were. And another English referee there, Mr. Ling.
Mr. Ling?
The thing called Ling. Remember Graham Poll was a thing from Tring? Well, Mr. Ling was a thing called Ling. And he said he didn't expect to win this World Cup, but I like this quote. The appetite for success grows as one eats.
Yeah, I like that as well. That was lovely. They played West Germany in the final. They beat them 8-3 in the group. And then they immediately, very early in the game, went 2 up. So you're thinking, these guys, this is over. But no. Puskás himself had a goal disallowed at the very end, and he said that there was a foul earlier in the build-up to West Germany's third goal, the winning goal. So you could see why they would be upset.
Yeah, it sounds crooked, doesn't it, Johnny? It does.
Yeah, it does. Also,
although why Mr. Ling would be helping out a German team, I don't know.
Andy Cummings' plot.
Yeah, crikey. Poor old Hungary.
This is something you definitely wouldn't get in a modern footballer's book. They stayed in a hotel in a place called Solothurn. Napoleon was the kind of logo of the hotel, so he inquired with the hotelier, who he described as being very kind and welcoming, and he said, well, Napoleon stayed here, that's why we've adopted him as our logo. And then Puskás says, well, Napoleon did lose the Battle of Borodino, although that was 15 years after he stayed at this hotel, and the Battle of Borodino was in Russia. So he says it was cursed. It was cursed. We shouldn't have stayed there. But I looked up the Battle of Borodino. Napoleon didn't lose the Battle of Borodino, but it was a Pyrrhic victory, Al, which is to mean they won, but they sustained such significant losses that it meant that they failed to decisively defeat the Russian Imperial Army, allowing them to regroup and essentially, drive them out of there. There you go. The most bloody battle of the Napoleonic Wars.
Well, there you go, history fans. That's for free.
Okay, that's all on board.
Sorry.
Okay, Moscow, the land of distances. We were driven along a road almost 50 feet wide to the heart of the city. Moscow's boulevards were seething with throngs of hurrying people, chains of cars, and an atmosphere of urgency. The buildings alternated between the old-fashioned long, low, one-story houses and modern skyscrapers. Two buildings particularly impressed us: the historical Kremlin and the Oak University, a huge skyscraper stretching into the cloud that hangs over Lenin Mountain. It is called the heartwarming home of knowledge.
Oh. He's a big fan. But then he has to say that about Russia, doesn't he? He won't be saying that in 2 years' time.
This was when they were back playing. All wonders only last 3 days. But, his attitude to losses were he had to just get on with it. He said it's sport and defeat is as much part of it as victory. So he kind of had to get on with life. So they were off to play USSR in Russia. It's funny because the book, the denouement of the book is the World Cup final. But then there's a few little stops afterwards, which he could have just left out.
I think that might be a little nod to communist Russia, right? He just has to quickly mention it. Moscow was impressive as well. As well as, I don't know, but it seemed that way because it was so obviously the end of the book. They lost the final.
Yeah,
that's why.
It came back from the the censors, and they're like, you might want to say a few nice things about Russia there, buddy, if you want this book to come out. Yeah,
that occurred to me, but possibly.
Yeah, maybe you're right.
There's a chapter called Italy's Problem, chapter 13, Italy's Problem. And he's describing what the problem is with the Italian football team. But in fact, the problem with the Italian football team was they all died in a fucking plane crash.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, they need better players. Well, they did have better players.
Yeah.
But they all died. Yeah, you need to get better.
Did you know about that?
No. I am learning so much.
So he says this towards the end of the book. Myself, I've been very fortunate. I have travelled much. I've seen many countries, learned the habits and customs of various nations. I have tried to see the good and the beautiful and tried to make myself a better human being. I believe that travel is the best master for teaching us how to become dignified members of this big human family. I am proud that I have won many, many friends in those countries where I have had the good fortune to play, and I think of them with thankfulness, as I do the opponents I have played against. Yeah, this guy's a real class act, you know that?
A real class act. And that's it. And as he writes this, he's achieved so much. But in fact, he has no idea what's going to come next. It's going to get even better, Puskás. It's going to get even, not for your country, but for you, it's going to be brilliant. It's going to be amazing. Yeah, so he's so astonishingly good, and he's not reached his peak yet. He really is a man with, he's just so great. I'm so glad I've learned about Puskás. I really didn't know. I know that he's not Lev Yashin now.
And I'd like to read about Lev Yashin as well.
Yes, I would too.
But like we could read these books for 10 years, and I don't think we'll come across one quite like this, actually. Which is not to say it's the best footballer's book, but it's very different than all the rest of the ones we've read.
Absolutely. It's the most revealing of a time and a place, I think. Exactly. I'm not even sure that's true, because we don't know exactly what he's thinking, because it must have been censored. But that in itself is interesting.
Yeah, it does make you wonder. Was this an exercise in foreign policy from the Hungarian government? All these there's actually some apparatchik in the Hungarian foreign ministry writing all of this stuff.
Oh, and by the way, giraffe's neck is so long so it can reach its head, and the lion's face is so wide so it can't get through the bars.
Yeah, there you go.
I didn't want anyone to be staying awake at night worrying about those things.
I'm sure loads of people would have Googled the answer anyway on hearing the question.
Yeah, so what else? Oh, he had a kid and a wife. He loved them both very much. He thinks footballers should get married. It makes them play better.
He did say he's talking about his daughter Aniko, and he says, and I sympathise because I have young children myself. Like all children who are natural dictators with a charm no father can resist. She always demands that I bring her gifts or whatever, but yeah, it is true. Natural dictators. I think we can all...
my little one is, get back. That's what she says to me now. Get back. Get back. Get back to where I once belonged.
Yeah, okay. Well, what do you think, Al? How many giraffes' necks? How many sausage matches?
All right, I'll go a sausage match. I give it 4 out of 5 sausage matches. It was informative and fun.
Yeah, I'm conscious of the fact that I gave the Grinch book 3.5 now, but because I think this is a 4 out of 5 book. And I think it's probably not as good as the Grinch book.
Yeah, that's true. It's not as good as the Grinch book, but this is first-hand, right? This is first-hand evidence.
This is one of the best books we've read. This is a real early icon of the game. He's speaking first-hand, and he's a really good writer, if it is him writing it, and he's damn lovely. It's great. And just that lovely, innocent and heartwarming interest in the rest of the world. It's really quite sweet.
Yeah, thoroughly recommend, and a totally good egg. And we will get back to the second part of his career sometime in the new year.
Will you be disappointed, Al, if when we get the second book, and it's also written by him, but it's absolute shit, and we learn that actually it wasn't Puskás who'd written it at all?
There's a very real danger that's going to happen, isn't there? And he's a real arsehole.
You do run into the problem of, again, it being under a dictatorial regime, so there's always the question of what people can and can't say, but it would still be interesting. The football would be, at least.
Absolutely right.
I would recommend people to read this. You would have to buy it on the internet and get a physical book delivered, because it's not on Kindle, and you can't have the dulcet tones of Mr. Puskás reading it into your ears.
Next episode, we're doing Eamon Dunphy's Only a Game.
Yeah, so this is kind of the genre-defining book by little-known footballer and well-known controversialist Eamon
This
Dunphy.
is the father of the modern football autobiography, isn't it?
Yeah, you say that, but then look at this Puskás book.
Yeah, way back when.
Please like this episode if you enjoyed this, and please do subscribe to the Adamola Bookman podcast, and please do share it widely if you can, because I think it all helps. Thank you very much, Al.
Okay, and Köszönöm G at Pallet Coffee in Sanford. Köszönöm G.
Very nice.